The story starts with Mark and his team speeding through space on a huge spaceship, joking around and trying to keep things light before the big fight. Suddenly, however, an explosion went off, tearing through the ship and putting everyone in danger. With the ship destroyed, the pieces floated aimlessly in the endless emptiness of space. The crew quickly separated from the wreckage and began heading back to their home base. It wasn't until then that they realized the explosion wasn't just some accident. It was an attack. Meanwhile, Mark, Oliver, and Tech Jacket hurried to the airlock. Holding their breath, they leaped into the emptiness, using special tech to communicate through thought signals. Mark told his younger brother to stay calm and look for any missing allies. But when he looked up, his face changed to one of complete shock. There, staring back at him, was none other than the Viltrumite warlord, Conquest, someone he was sure he had killed. But this time, Conquest wasn't by himself either. Floating next to him was Lucan, a fierce warrior over 1,000 years old, along with another dangerous Viltrumite. Grinning, Conquest savored the chance for a rematch, teasing Mark about bringing backup this time. He couldn't help but enjoy the moment, continuing to taunt, making it clear that this time his orders were simple. No one would survive. You see, Conquest was indeed still alive. After being captured by the government in an effort to learn about Viltrumite physiology, Conquest broke out as soon as he regained consciousness, flying back up to Viltrum, where he faced Grant Regent Thrag. Thrag, unimpressed by Conquest's failure on Earth, loomed over him, calling him nothing more than an animal. Conquest begged Thrag for mercy, explaining that he severely underestimated the boy Mark, before being ordered to intercept the ship. Back in space, Conquest vowed he wasn't going to make the same mistake again. Mark, furious, clenched his fists as Conquest laughed, calling Eve a donut as that's what he made her into last time. Before Mark could react, Oliver recklessly charged toward Conquest, ignoring his brother's desperate shout to stop. Mark tried to intervene, but Lucan grabbed him in a crushing grip. As Oliver hurtled forward, Tech Jacket fired off an energy blast, frustrated that their supposed plan had immediately turned to a mess. Then, Nolan emerged, his eyes widening in horror as he realized the magnitude of the situation. Conquest barely acknowledged Oliver's presence, swatting him aside like a fly and mocking that he'd serve as a decent warm-up. Enraged, Nolan rocketed toward Conquest, tackling him away from his son. Meanwhile, Tech Jacket struggled against the unknown Viltrumite, whose sheer power made Zack's attacks seem almost useless. Desperate, Zack activated his suit's strike form and finally managed to land a solid hit, forcing his opponent off him. Conquest couldn't believe his luck. Out of all the enemies he could have faced today, he had the privilege of killing the traitor, Nolan. With a brutal headbutt, Conquest rammed into Nolan's face, breaking his nose. But Mark wasn't about to let his father go down. Charging in, he collided with Conquest, and they both went tumbling through space. Nolan shouted a warning, but Mark was determined. Fists flying, Mark demanded to know how Conquest was still alive, throwing punch after punch as he screamed that he had killed him back on Earth. But Conquest barely flinched. Smirking, he effortlessly tossed Mark aside, mocking that the boy didn't seem as strong as before. Still confused and enraged, Mark demanded answers. Finally, Conquest revealed the truth. After their battle on Earth, he had awoken encased in steel, deep beneath the planet's surface. Someone was foolish enough to believe they could contain him. Mark immediately suspected Cecil, vowing to confront him later. But there was no time for that now. Conquest slammed his fist into Mark's face, mocking his optimism before launching another attack. Elsewhere, Nolan once again saved Oliver from Lucan's relentless assault. Landing a powerful double-footed kick to Lucan's chest, he sent the ancient warrior reeling. Lucan sneered that Nolan should have made sure he was dead last time, but Nolan just smirked, promising that he wouldn't make the same mistake. With a well-placed kick, he sent Lucan spiraling through space. Mark barely had time to process this before Conquest cracked him with a brutal left hook. Nearby, Oliver and Nolan worked together, landing blows on Lucan while Alan the alien restrained his own opponent. Zack, still recovering, questioned why they had only seen 3 Viltrumites so far. As if on cue, reinforcements arrived, turning the battle into absolute mayhem. Realizing they couldn't win in a direct fight, Nolan assessed their surroundings. He spotted Oliver struggling to breathe in space and remembered that they had just passed a planet moments ago. He shouted for Oliver to fly to the surface of the planet so he could catch his breath. Back in the heart of the battle, Mark's fist connected with Conquest's jaw, sending him staggering. But Conquest wasn't done. He laughed at Oliver's retreat, claiming that running would only ensure his death. With a sudden burst of speed, he sent Mark flying before taking off after Oliver, eager to kill him. Not willing to let his little brother die, Mark quickly recovered and shot after them. As they entered the planet's atmosphere, Mark caught up and tackled Conquest from behind, driving him into the side of a massive cliff. The impact created a violent explosion, sending debris flying. As the dust settled, Mark sat atop Conquest, his fingers locked around the warlord's throat. But Conquest only smiled, further fueling Mark's rage. Mark tightened his grip, but before he could finish him off, Conquest launched himself off the ground, dragging Mark with him back into space in an effort to break free. But letting go was the last thing Mark was about to do. Below, Nolan and Alan battled the Viltrumite reinforcements. Noticing Mark's absence, Alan quickly deduced where he had gone. Without hesitation, Nolan abandoned the fight to track down his son. Alan, watching his allies vanish one by one, sighed and muttered that this mission had officially gone to hell. By now, both Mark and Conquest, covered in blood, crashed into the rocky terrain below, their bodies battered and broken. Yet even as his vision blurred, Mark gritted his teeth and kept his grip on Conquest's neck. How much longer can Conquest hold on for? Before he could finish that thought, however, Conquest let out a final desperate attack, reaching for Mark's internal organs before ripping it out of him, turning him into a donut, just like he did with Eve. But in the end, Mark still refused to let go. Conquest's body finally went limp, lifeless. Mark instantly collapsed beside him, victorious. Moments later, Nolan and Oliver arrived, gazing at the gruesome scene before them. And with that, the rematch was over. Conquest was finally dead, for real this time. Mark clung to life by a thread. Recognizing the dire situation, Omni-Man and Oliver, upon finding Mark, made a fateful decision. They would remain on the planet, nursing Mark back to health, even as the Coalition's headquarters faced a potential onslaught. The road to recovery would be grueling, demanding months of relentless care and patience. During this time, Omni-Man decided he would bury Conquest, an act that disgusted Oliver. But Omni-Man stood firm. No matter how monstrous Conquest had been, he was still one of Viltrum's greatest warriors, and his remains deserved respect. As the days went on, survival became instinctual. Oliver and Omni-Man hunted the planet's wildlife in order to stay alive. In doing so, the father and son also had their fair share of bonding time and grew closer. Oliver tells Omni-Man that during his time in Thraxa, he realized he was attracted to the people there. As Mark slowly regained consciousness after some months, Omni-Man explains that Mark had killed Conquest by himself this time. But Mark was still in denial. He couldn't possibly fathom how he had managed to take down an enemy as fearsome as Conquest. Had it been a fluke? A desperate stroke of luck? But Omni-Man saw the truth. His son possessed a power far greater than even he understood. A strength that in time, Mark would come to accept. With no time to waste, the trio launched toward Telescria, the Coalition of Planets' headquarters, now a war zone. A brutal assault was already underway, but their arrival shifted the tide. The sight of them reignited hope among the Coalition forces, rallying them to fight back with renewed determination. The battle for Telescria was only the beginning. With the Viltrumite threat looming, the Coalition had to act fast. A final, full-scale assault on Viltrum was imminent, one that would decide the fate of the galaxy.